Welcome back to a bonus episode of I've Never Read Discworld, where we are not going to read any Discworld, Andy.
We're not going to read any Discworld.
What we
I'm
got?
Andy Luke. I haven't read much Discworld, maybe about 10 or 11 books. So I can be kind of let off some of the things you're going to hear in this podcast, some controversial choices.
Indeed.
Co-host is
PJ Hart. I've read most of Discworld, and what we're going to talk about today, something I've been thinking about for a long time, so I have no excuse for my answers being so shoddy. And so without further ado, Andy, take us away. What are we talking about on this special edition of I've Never Read Discworld?
another question from Roasty Buns.
Oh, yeah.
Any questions you have, send them to us. And I know we always say we'll get for a postal thing, but I think when we're doing special episodes like this, it's a much more relaxed thing. We have more time and
So yes, Roasty Buns, what have you got? I feel like somebody else needs to kind of jump in. You know, Roasty Buns is like really carrying all the weight in terms of the reader.
yeah.
Reader.
Do you know
In terms
what
of
I'm
the
going
listener
to do?
questions.
What I'm going to do? I am going to attach to this podcast on Spotify and on Twitter, and I am going to post Roasty Buns' question out so that it's not just me and PJ doing all the hard work, and you
Good
can
idea.
all do that. And if you don't like that, then tough, just do
You,
it.
you can't
And
stop us.
you can ask your own questions, and maybe we can put the burden on someone else. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Andy's hard line.
He's looking tough, guys. You don't want to like him when he's angry. You won't. Nope. Messed that up. Cut that.
Um,
Proceed.
so, what actors come to mind if you had to cast a TV series about Discworld? Who would they play? They don't have to visually match up, but people you think would thrive as a characters or put an interesting spin on it.
Yeah, it's opening the Pandora's box for me. I've strong opinions about these things. We touched on it very briefly, I suppose, when we talked about the Watch series when we were talking about guards. So I'll let you go first, Andy.
Oh, right. Okay. Um, so, yeah, this is um, certainly got a few things that's going to trigger strong opinions, not just in you. And thank goodness the Discord community is so lovely because in other fandoms, it'd be whole hate videos devoted to me.
Totally.
Actually, please go out and make hate videos about me.
Do it anyway. Yeah, it's all engagement is good engagement. Drive the algorithm. Like,
So I set myself one rule.
okay.
That was modern day casting. So uh,
Yeah.
no going back to the Hammer House of Horror and putting my death from there in. Oh, right. Death is actually the most contentious choice. I'm not going to start.
Interesting.
I'll come back to death.
Ooh. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so for the witches,
Hmm.
Weatherwax, Diana Rigg,
Sure. Yeah.
senior
Classic choice.
matriarch in
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, Nana Yogg, Michelle Gomez. I,
Okay.
I think she has that very chatty persona. It's a bit random. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
a very different character than I have seen her in previously, but I think she could do really well with that.
And the dynamic between those two, that's not something I could. Yeah, I mean that could be exciting. It's definitely left field, like, but that's what you want. That relationship needs to be spiky, like. So yeah, I can see that.
Granny Weatherwax is a really hard one, I think, to think
Yeah.
about. For Margaret Garlic, I had I well, this is the first time I've had a bunch of different choices. So initially, I put down Nadia Sohala.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I
can see that.
also settled for Julia Sohala, who I adore. Then Alison Brie,
Yeah.
and probably just because Orphan Black is so amazing, Tatiana Maslany, who shouldn't be able to get in their home because of awards.
Yeah. Oh, totally agree. I mean, and like she could play anything. She could play me, and she would be better at playing me than me. Just be like, yeah, fine. Um, for me, like Alison Brie is the right energy, but you can't go American. That's just you just can't. You know.
Well, I've gone there a little bit, but it was very much at the back of my mind. You don't want to keep
Yeah,
it
yeah.
mostly British and Irish.
It does make it harder, I guess. But and there's so much great talent in the States. But yeah, Alison Brie Energy definitely. I wonder who the UK equivalent or Irish equivalent of that might be. But sorry, go on, go on.
Do you have any choices yourself with the witches?
For the witches, yeah, for sure. It's boring. It's the one everybody says online. Like but it's hard for me to see past Miriam Margulis for Nanny.
You
I
know, I
guess
thought that as well, but I
yeah,
don't know her work well enough.
it's a bit too obvious, I guess. And I was gonna sort of say the Diane Rigg choice for me is a classic choice for Granny, but I would maybe want to see someone slightly younger in the role. But then I kind of contradicted myself by putting Miriam in the nanny role, and she would be a more contemporary of Diana, I guess. So what I'm building up to, like my kind of slightly more out there choice for Granny Weather will actually be Sarah Lancashire from Happy Valley. So she'd be in her 50s, I guess, and she's like a no nonsense Northern Yorkshire police sergeant on the beat, and just takes like zero guff from anybody. Self censored myself there at that time, and is very kind of uses a lot of headology in her sort of role in the police force there. But she also has this like quite a dark backstory and deals with serious issues. So like when Granny has to get real, like Sarah Lancashire's there to get real for sure. Yeah, Magrat is one I find trickier. I find Magrat really hard to pin down, especially in the early books in terms of like her what age she's supposed to be, even like because she does
My
kind of get
reading
off.
of her is the 30s, 40s, maybe.
Yeah, but then she has all this kind of like hippie sort of teenagery kind of like just the way she gets on. So yeah, it's kind of a tricky one.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's why Nadia Swahala came
yeah,
to mind. I don't know Nadia's stuff.
it's a really
I
good
know
choice.
Julia's stuff. I love Julia in Press Gang specifically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But Nadia has a wonderful, I think it's her Instagram account,
Uh-huh.
um, where she gets active quite a bit and has quite a lot of fun, a
Mm.
lot of comedy coming through that.
Yeah, leave Magrat with me because I feel that like even before we started talking about casting, like she's always been a character that I find it hard to get a handle on compared to the other two.
Look at Dibbler next. And oh, I had three choices for Dibbler.
Okay,
So the first, I don't know how well known this actor is today.
I'm standing by
Um,
with Google. I'm standing by to Google them.
Paul Reynolds. So
Paul
I mentioned Press Gang.
Reynolds.
Paul Reynolds played the character of Colin Matthews. The essentially Colin Matthews is Dibbler. He
Yeah,
will sell anything to anyone, and he's a bit sort of eccentric, a bit mad. And it's a fan casting this in this case. Uh,
yeah. I'm looking at him. Other than Press Gang, oh,
I've
he's in
not
that.
seen him. He has been doing stuff since, but not as much as you would expect after seeing him in Press Gang, because it really was a sort of an outlier kind of role. Like if any character was going to get a spin-off from Press Gang, it would have
Yeah,
been Colin. Um,
yeah, sure.
Mackenzie Crook also came to mind.
Great choice.
And just because I have a chance to cast somebody, Michael Smiley.
Ah, yeah. I mean, Smiley would be great. Again, going at the for the age range of it, like I've worked with Smiley a few times, and he's awesome. And he is a little bit Dibbler-esque in real life. He can be quite hard to read sometimes, and he's got. But I would consider deploy. I think that's a really good choice. I would consider deploying Smiley elsewhere in Discworld, maybe because,
Ooh,
but
I'm definitely intrigued. I'm a
yeah,
Smiley fan. I want to see more of him. The Black Mirror episode that he was genuinely terrifying in it.
incredible. Yeah, no, he's a great actor. He's a great
Freaky
bloke as well.
horror,
Yeah,
one of the scariest Black Mirrors. But what it demonstrated is his abilities as a frontline showman.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And I think that's why he'd be so good for Dibbler.
Yeah, and actually that's a fair point because it's one of the roles that is the most. It's like it's a very straight comedy role. A lot of Discworld, you know, especially if we're thinking about the Watch, Ankh-Morpork characters, like there's comedy drama, but like Dibbler is comic relief in pretty much every story that he's in, and I mean Smiley's got great comic presence and comic timing and great range. So
This isn't going to endear me to Michael Smiley, but you can imagine him behind a market stall.
I don't think he would have any issue with that. If I recall, he's got some family connection to the markets in the markets area in Belfast, so I think he'd probably be happy enough with that.
He would do that patter so well that yeah,
He does,
five
yeah,
lighters for a pound, six apples
yeah.
for a pound.
So I did the series with him about 10 years ago now. We're like, because he's big into cycling. 'Cause, yeah, as I'm sure if
Ah,
you're,
the spaced.
yeah. So that was when he
Right.
did Space. That was his real job. He was a bike courier in London, and he lived with the guys. So obviously now that he's much more successful doing other things, we did the series with him for BBC Northern Ireland, where he came home and just cycled around the 6 counties meeting people, and just like, yeah, as you say, his charm and his wit and his way with people, and they all give him free stuff. He's like, you know, like we're there taking up their time so that we can make our TV show, and they're giving us free stuff for Smiley. So
Brilliant.
like, so it totally works. Yeah,
What's this series called?
it's called Something to Write Home About. It can no longer be found. It's been off iPlayer for many a year now, unfortunately. A few clips and stuff still floating around on YouTube. And if you follow Smiley on Twitter or whatever, he'll occasionally repost it, clips and stuff from it. It's hard for me to see past that, but I might actually, you've talked me into it. I'll just have to agree with that now, actually.
Did you have a Dibbler choice before I said that?
I was thinking again, because I'm always thinking about the age ranges and stuff. I was thinking about Barry Cohen, who briefly appears as the Joker in the new Batman movie. He's an Irish actor. His sort of biggest recent role would have been in the Banshees of Inisherin, and he's just like, I mean, he's young. He's younger than me, but he's like a disarming, cheeky chappy kind of. But so he's got. I'm explaining this really badly, because I'm trying to spoil any of these films. But you sort of feel that like he would reel you in by being sincere, but then he would like absolutely take you to the cleaners, because he's like, you know, you can sort of see both sides of him. Like I say, I mean, he's been cast as the Joker, so that tells you all you need to know. But he's young, so like thinking about, yeah, I'm conscious of that. You know, when you think about the witches and you think about the Watch characters, like, yeah, there's a tendency to think of like older actors. So I'm always kind of thinking like, if you were to do this, like the 2030s casting of Discworld, you know. But yeah, he's awesome, and also yeah, the likes of Smiley and Barry, you know, going for the local guys is always the way to go as well.
Okay, I think I've curried favor at this point, so I'm going to drop in my most controversial choices.
Let's do it.
Death. Um, I don't want you to spit out your water, so I'm going to wait till you finish drinking.
That's not water.
My first choice, and they're all controversial choices for Death,
Okay.
Matt Berry. Then
Hmm.
Stuart Lee and Kevin Eldon. Can you get on with any of those choices?
Yes. So Matt Berry is in the Watch series, but he is
Oh.
not Death. The Talking Sword, whatever book that was in. You remember the Talking Sword?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that Matt Berry is the Talking Sword, and it's good. It's funny, and you can kind of see, especially thinking of that slightly more playful portrayal of Death that we've just kind of been talking about. You know, the Graham Higgins version of Death. I can absolutely see Matt Berry for sure. Kevin Eldon, great choice as well, though, just in terms of that absolute deadpan with a capital dead, like, you know. Who was your middle choice again?
Stuart Lee.
Stuart Lee, I love, but his sarcastic Death, I don't know if I can vibe with that quite as much. I think Kevin's a lot more dead, like straight deadpan,
Yeah.
not quite as sardonic. I don't know if I see Death quite as sardonic as Stuart
Lee is a hard one to cast in anything, because I think he has just set himself up now as this sort of lecturer on comedy, this deconstructor,
Yeah,
that he's so much doing his own thing. It's very hard to kind of fit him into something. In the last acting role I saw him in was Armando Iannucci's wonderful Time Trumpet.
Oh yeah, I mean that's going back. Like,
where he played clones of himself in the future world of 2030.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, again, Death. I sort of feel that like you've probably taken a better approach to it than I would, which is like going for somebody who can bring a lot more character to the voice. Whereas I'm kind of I guess because it's a character I've just been familiar with for so long. Like, when you first read that character when you're a kid, you can't help but think, because he speaks in all capitals in the books, right? His dialogue's always written in all capitals. You have to think that he sounds like Darth Vader.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
mean, obviously,
you have
sorry,
to go big with Death. I mean, Christopher Lee,
and
legend.
Christopher Lee was
And
great when he did it, But for me, like moving away, it's really hard for me to get the idea out of my head, and it's boring to say, oh, it should be James Earl Jones, because like that's boring. I mean, he would be amazing at it, obviously, but it's boring. So like, I thought another Armando Iannucci project, actually, Jason Isaacs, in The Death of Stalin, where he plays big Russian general who won the war,
yes, comes
but
in the second.
yeah, but plays him with like a Yorkshire accent, so he's like,
Yes.
so he's this huge character, and he's like super intimidating in it, but he's like, there's a lot of character in the vocal performance, and warmth isn't the right word, but humor is, though, I guess. But it's like it's humor with an edge, the way he delivers all his lines, and you can just kind of think Death has loads of funny lines in Discworld, but like he's holding a scythe the whole time, and it just kind of, I thought maybe there's something in that, and I know he has done voice acting. I think he's done some voice acting in Star Wars actually too. So yeah, so there might be something in that. So Jason Isaacs is my choice, I think, for Death.
Well, I'll go to some of the. I've only got two university staff, I think. So Wendell Poons was another tough one, and I started thinking Malkovich,
Oh,
Hopkins,
interesting.
and I don't have a clear image of this actor, but I seem to have settled on Charles Dance.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, Charles Dance, to me, um, it's hard to picture him like in a wheelchair the whole time. I still feel like he's got a bit of physicality about him. So,
I
but I
also
get
have
it.
actor from Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, what do you
Charles
call the
Dance.
guy?
Who is Charles Dance?
Charles Dance is Game of Thrones. He's the head of the Lannisters family.
Oh, Tywin. Yes,
Yeah, Tywin Lannister. Yeah, that's
yes.
him.
Because he is a character who just looks severe.
I mean,
Um,
he's the right age, and he can act. He can really act. But I guess he is probably more known for those kind of
Severe
like
roles. Yeah.
authoritarian kind of roles, I guess, to be fair to say. And like Wendell, I guess just because he's confined to the wheelchair. Although Charles Dance as the resurrected Wendell, where he does have a bit more agency and stuff like that, in Reaperman. Yeah, that could be something. Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that. There's a guy. I'm stalling here because I'm trying to look up somebody who is my pick. His name I thought I knew, and I've just gone totally blank on it. Um,
I'm going to sneak into the interim and pick a wonderful choice, The Librarian, voiced by Stephen Fry.
that is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because I mean, I would have gone for like the boring, obvious choice. The Andy Serkis choice for sure. Bit of a waste. Well, it's a waste of Steven's talents as well. But like, you do need that. It's that Vin Diesel, I am Groot thing. You need somebody who can really nail the ook. You know, Stephen Fry's an excellent choice. Sorry. So to circle back, the actor whose name I was convinced I knew and it went out of my head, who could be Wendell Poons all day long, I think is David Bradley. Do you know who that is?
Oh, yes, who played
Yeah.
Hartnell's doctor.
Yes,
Oh,
that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Interesting.
So, so he, because in Hot Fuzz, he's got that kind of, I mean, he's the cranky old man who nobody can understand, except he's a farmer with a shed full of guns. So he kind of has done that role
Bradley would be
already.
good, yeah.
and then he plays Ricky Gervais's dad in Afterlife, and again he's kind of like not fully compos mentis or whatever, but he gives quite it's a nuanced but still quite funny performance. So, and he's still up and about, like, you know, so he can do both versions, I think. And there you go, and he's another Game of Thrones alumni. See, we're teeing this all up so that we can shoot it in Northern Ireland, aren't we?
Yeah, my next choice. I don't know how well known this actor is, but certainly I've when I saw his show reel, I went, that guy, and I've actually working with him in the audio play that we talked about earlier, Milby and Bridge.
Awesome.
So the actor's name for Red Cully is Brian Devlin. I know he's worked with Colm Meaney on some stuff.
Brian Devlin, did you say?
Brian Devlin. I'm gonna put an image of him on screen.
Local chap.
Local chap.
Oh yeah, I worked with him. I've worked with him apparently. I've just looked him up on IMDb. He was in the very first feature film I ever worked on, which was called Peacefire, and apparently he played a character called Mr. Doyle. I have no recollection of any of that happening. It was in 2007, but there you go. Good for him. Yeah,
The
certainly.
show reel is entirely worth a look. I think he's got that sort of wild man kind of sort of dangerous energy, and a bit sort of unpredictable as well.
Oh, you've seen Scapegoat as well. I worked on that too. I feel bad. I worked with this guy twice. I don't remember who he is, so that's on me. That's not on him. That's on me. I just want to put that out there. Ridcully, again.
Bradley would also make a good Ridcully.
He could, but you know who I think from maybe hasn't pipped, and it's boring to go back to Game of Thrones cast, but James Cosmo, who was the head of the Night's Watch. Have I got his name right? I think I have. So like he's a slightly larger physical presence, but you can kind of, James Cosmo, that's him. But you can kind of see him, you know, being the kind of the slightly rough and tumble version of Ridcully, who likes, you know, hunting and stuff like that. You know, you can see him. He's got the wizard look, but you can see him getting his hands dirty too. You know, so he's my pick, definitely for Ridcully.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't imagine that probably feels a bit safe and a bit boring to the listeners, but you know, I think he's great.
When we're talking about both Puddins and Ridcully, there's just an actor keeps popping into my head, and he played Sophie's dad in Peep Show. Paul Clayton.
I'll know him when I see him. I can vaguely recall the character in Peep Show.
So it was a his story was a farmyard based story. So it's a bit of a typecasting kind of.
He is also he's in the new Game of Thrones. He's not in the original. He's in House of the Dragon apparently. What do I know him from? I recognize Peep Show. I guess I recognize his face for sure. Yeah, I can see that. He's got that vibe in the new Full Monty. Yeah, he's from Sheffield. Yeah, so anybody who feels a little bit, anybody with a UK regional accent is totally in with a shout for Ridcully. I think you can't be like, because he's an outsider Arch Chancellor, you have to be from the countryside. That's his whole thing. People from Sheffield are going to write in and say Sheffield is not the countryside, and that is totally fair to say. Okay, who else have you got?
That's my university choices. Have you any more to add? I've got some Night's Watch too.
As I say, it's
April.
Yeah, Bradley for Poons, James Cosmo for Ridcully. Or you could switch him. Does that count? Does that cheating? You could switch him around.
Well, I have that. I have a number of actors in the Night's Watch that I'd considered for both the roles of Nobby and Carrot. I had Chris Addison and Will Smith, who plays Phil in the thick of it.
Yeah, oh man.
I also had an actor I worked with called Stephen Calvert, a young, charismatic actor with sort of great leadership qualities. He's got a real presence to him. He's in the the Milvian
Oh
Bridge
yeah,
audio play as
yeah.
well.
I recognize
Calvert
his
is
headshot.
Calvert's going to be massive.
Cool.
So bring him into your projects, treat him right as soon as you can. So I think I'd probably have Stephen Calvert as Nobby,
Okay.
and for Carrot, Danny Pudi.
Okay. That is an interesting choice. That's a good one, actually. I've got time for him all day long. But again, yeah, just going American, but like going for that nobody does the wide-eyed sense of wonder the way that he does it.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's quite. I mean, it's quite different to if you look at his role on Mythic Choice. It's kind of an anti-Abid. It's kind of
mm,
very much the opposite, much darker sort of character. But you know, Larry, he was on DuckTales.
Larry?
Larry, you're not aware of this meme, the Danny Pudi. So he was doing an interview with Larry King, and Larry King is asking, you know, what do you want? Do you want, you know, if you could have anything, a jet plane, you know, a gold palace, what do you want? And Putty wasn't playing ball with him at all in
Not
this
going for it.
question. And you know, he says, what do you mean? You can't say socks. Daddy Putty's talking about his love socks, and so, you know, do you want limousine? Do you want this? And Cody just says, Larry, I was on DuckTales.
Fair enough.
Um,
Oh, sorry, I just thought about another Red Gilly, actually. Sorry, I
go
did
first.
mess about it. Jared Harris.
Oh,
He's most recently has been starring in Foundation for Apple TV. But he's Richard Harris's son, like, so you know he's got chops. He is he's sensational in a couple of things I saw recently. The Terror, which was this BBC AMC co-production about the ships, the real life ships, HMS Terror and HMS Erebus, that tried to find the Northwest Passage in the 19th century and they got lost. So it's this imagining, it's this sort of slightly supernatural imagining of what happened to those ships, and he's the captain or the first mate. I think he's the captain of one of them. I can't remember which one. But so yeah, so he's English. He's Richard Harris's son, right? So he's English, but he plays a character from Banbridge, Northern Ireland. But his character is ashamed of being Irish and puts on, you know, he sort of puts on a bit of a posh accent, and you can see every layer of that in his performance. It's absolutely masterful. But he's got the right look, and he can be quite humorous. He can be a bit cheeky, but you know he's in his probably 50s or 60s now, and he plays an academic in Foundation, which is this sci-fi thing on Apple. So I feel like there's a lot of things in the mix there, just in terms of his talent, his drama chops, his comedy chops. He's in The Expanse. He's in the early series of The Expanse. I've talked about my love of The Expanse before, so he gets points for
who
me.
did he play
for
in The
that as well.
Expanse?
He's like the leader of one of the freedom fighter faction, Anderson Dawes.
Mm.
So he's like kind of the first kind of leader of the OPA that you meet in like the early series of The Expanse. If none of this means anything to anybody, feel free to just ignore me.
I will add a visual to the video to help.
Yeah, it's like this is real.
Jared Harris for Rid Cully. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
he's awesome. Sorry.
my guard. So I really tried wanted to build them as a unit with the witches as the same. And it was really tough deciding on Sam Vimes. I had Ian Glenn, didn't feel that was right. Sean Bean, wasn't entirely confident. And then I realized that I really wanted to cast in something Roger Allen.
Roger
I
Allen.
would take Roger Allen for Sam Vimes. So Roger Allen, who appeared, I think, in the first episode or two of Game of Thrones as one of Khaleesi's advisors. But he's best known to me for the role of Peter Mannion in The Thick of
I was
It.
gonna say, are we talking about Allen from The Thick of It
Yep,
as Vimes?
that's Vimes.
Oof, I don't know, man.
All the other choices that I had are dead.
Okay,
Rob Parker,
that's
dead.
fair. That's fair.
Um,
I mean, he is great, and actually, just looking at as I reminded myself of his career. I mean, he's got some really great meaty roles in like V for Vendetta and The Wind That Shakes the Barley, like big proper, and he's in Sandman actually. It's in the
Oh,
new Sandman
really?
series. He's the
I
voice of
missed that.
he does the voice of Azazel, one of
Oh,
the demons anyway. So yeah, so there you go. He's already in. He's in the gaming Pratchett TV verse already.
so
So cool.
back
Definitely
to
not.
back to the Game of Thrones. Polo, keeping it local. For Sergeant Colon, you want someone big. You want Christian Nairn.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I like that a
So
lot.
Roger Allam, Christian Nairn, Stephen Calvert, Danny Putty.
Yeah, that is.
There's my watch.
That's quite the pick. I have a local guy for Nobby. I'll throw out there. And again, this is going to be one you'll have to either look it up yourself or you'll have to, we'll flash up a graphic or whatever. I just want to make sure I get his name right. What was I? I was looking at something that he was in here a minute ago. Oh yeah, Banshees. So bear with me. It's going to be worth the wait. His name is David Pierce. He plays the priest in Banshees of Inisherin. He's in The Guard with Brendan Gleeson. This is like another big-ish comedy. I'm trying to think of stuff that people have actually seen that he's in. I mean, he's in a bunch of really good local stuff as well. He's in Boys from County Hell. No, is he? He's in Bad Day for the Cut for sure, which is the first film by the guys who did Boys from County Hell. And I seen him in a play during COVID, and he's got the right stature. He's not a tall guy, and he can be like really mean and and rude, a little bit creepy, but also like really funny. He's just brilliant. Yeah, he's got this scene in The Guard where Don Cheadle comes and knocks on his door at his cottage in Donegal or wherever it's meant to be, and he opens the door and just starts giving out to Don Cheadle in Gaelic, in the Irish language, and it just gives him such a slagging, and you're like, this is Nobby. Nobby would do this, like. So he's my pick for Nobby all day long, and I think perhaps because, and this has always been my pick. This I feel people are gonna say I'm cheating now. I'm just reading the cast list of the Banshees of Inisherin, but Brendan Gleeson has always kind of been my pick for Colon.
Right.
So I'm gonna stand by that, even though it feels like I'm cheating slightly, but he's obviously been on my radar for a lot longer than David Pierce has. So Brendan Gleeson, just in terms of the stature, that kind of like somebody like who thinks or who knows a thing or two about the world, who's long enough in the tooth to just be like,
Yeah.
let's just see how this pans out, like thinking about him on the bridge when Wendell Poons jumps into the water, like you can think that's Gleeson is there, like okay. Just figuring that out. And yeah, I can see those two in particular having a dynamic. Vimes, touched on it before. I mean, I will die on this hill. Richard Dormer was the perfect casting for Vimes in The Watch, and they just gave him the wrong version of Vimes.
Wow.
And if you watch the first series of Blue Lights, I know I mentioned this before, but if you watch the first series of Blue Lights and see the character that he plays in that, and it's the authentic version of Vimes that we didn't get to see in The Watch. So it's really hard for me to look past him. Back in the day, before maybe Richard would have been on my radar quite as much. Paddy Considine is a name that would have been kicked around, maybe. Would have been kicking around my head for Vimes. I mean, and actually, if anything, he's probably aged into the role. Like, I was probably thinking of him like after like Dead Man's Shoes, where he's got that kind of gruff, like, walking the streets, kind of no nonsense, dangerous, but with a heart of gold kind of thing going on. And since then, he's shown his comedy chops as well, and like Hot Fuzz and loads of other stuff. So Paddy Considine, Richard Dormer would be my two kind of top picks. And I guess I have to say Paddy now because Richard, they kind of sabotaged Richard already. So
I've got two more stops on my list. Rincewind.
yeah.
And I now looking at it, I don't know if I'm on to anything.
Oh,
Bob Odenkirk.
as Rincewind?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see it. I can
No,
actually
I
really
haven't.
see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, again, I mean, my knee-jerk reaction to any Americans is gonna be no, but then like if you're gonna throw out like you know absolute huge presences like Danny Pity, Bob Odenkirk, it's hard to kind of be like, how could you refuse them?
Yeah,
Again,
roasty buns. You didn't give us a budget. Well, I mean, that's I'm sorry about the Bell roasty buns, but it's a hefty
yeah,
one.
gonna have to get the studio on the phone. And
Bravo.
that again,
It's so good.
it's so interesting to think about, and it's always been an issue with Rincewind. Like, what age do you cast them? And like, obviously, they went maybe too far one way in the Sky versions, but like, yeah, Bob Odenkirk, like younger but not too much younger. Huge comedy chops, massive drama chops, as we said recently in Better Call
Wow.
Saul. Uh, Now, good genre chops and Nobody. Did you see Nobody, where he's like an action star? Basically he's doing like his Liam Neeson Taken thing, where he like just goes to town on a bunch of guys. It's awesome. For me, again, this is one that I've kind of felt not strongly about, but like has definitely been in my head for a while, and I think again probably feels like a safe choice to people out there. But Stephen Merchant,
Oh, okay.
for, you know,
Interesting.
for me, like Rincewind, and another reason that gave me pause, I think Bob Odenkirk, for me, like Rincewind has to be this kind of like gangly bag of elbows. For some reason, I don't know if that's ever, if he's ever actually described that way in the books, but like my mental image is definitely like Stephen Merchant, I
We've had
guess.
Kirby has drawn him that way, so
You know what? That's probably it. Maybe. I mean, Steve. It's a terrible thing to say about somebody. That Stephen Merchant looks like looks like a Josh Kirby illustration. There, there you have it.
okay. My last choice, and I think it's fairly safe here, is
Hmm.
the Patrician,
Yeah.
Peter Capaldi.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Capaldi is
Absolutely.
still, despite his exposure, he's still an actor who feels, when you look at him, he feels removed. He feels alien, and with his own stuff going on.
Yeah.
To quote what somebody said about Bob Odenkirk, actually, and when he was introduced to Breaking Bad, he feels like a character who's come in from another show, and
Yeah.
I think Peter Capaldi has that as well. So, the Patrician entirely with his own schemes, his own unique reading of Ankh-Morpork and how to move pieces around
Yeah.
and manage
I th-
stuff.
I
Yeah.
think he'd be great at it. I think that the biggest frustration in it would be though, like because the patrician never loses his cool, but he's put in all these situations where you expect him to. You're watching Peter Capaldi just waiting him to go to town on somebody, but the patrician never does. I think that would be frustrating because you know that that potential's there. But I think he would still nail it. He would still totally nail it.
You've got
Um,
his later Doctor Who stuff. He's a much softer sort of portrayal, and I mean you're obviously not getting that humanity from the portrayal,
yeah,
but just being in that space of sort of waiting for him to go off and then never actually going off could be quite interesting. I
it
mean,
would be.
obviously, if
It would,
you've read the books, you know he's
yeah,
not. So maybe there's a bit of something being taken away there.
but he
Although
would nail it. He would nail it. But yeah, putting him back in a political role and not letting him go Malcolm Tucker on somebody feels like a shame. For me, I really enjoyed Jeremy Irons' performance as the patrician.
oh, is that one I have to look forward to?
No, is that not? Am I getting that wrong? Was he not in the Color of Magic adaptation?
Oh, but I guess I wouldn't really have been paying attention because he didn't
Yeah,
register to me at that point.
I'll just double check, just fact check myself here. I'm like, oh yeah, that was a really good performance. But yes, sorry, I've just double checked myself. It was Jeremy Irons. I thought he was good. I mean, he was. I don't mind the patrician being a bit older. I mean, Peter Capaldi's a bit older. Jeremy Irons recently in the Watchmen series, the HBO Watchmen series. As as an older version of Ozymandias, he brought a lot of depth to that role. So I mean, he plays at the patrician in The Color of Magic, pretty straight up. But I think you know, it's a small role, it's a small part in that adaptation, but in thinking about books where we see more of the patrician, based on some of Jeremy Irons' more recent performances, I think that's definitely something there. Again, quite a straight choice. See, the problem with this is, right, because I started thinking about all this when I was like 12 years old. So like all my choices are really boring because they're like the choices of a 12-year-old boy.
Did anybody
Uh,
else like how PJ pronounced Ozymandias as
so
Ozymandias?
just throwing a different emphasis in there again.
Yeah,
That's the
very
problem when you
classic.
like when you read books like this, like um, Watchmen, when you're too young to have actually ever heard these words spoken out loud.
Ozymandias. I feel I've been pronouncing it wrong all these years.
I'm now convinced that I am too. It's not a word that comes up that much in casual conversation.
Oh no, like a cup of Ozymandias.
Yeah. I had another choice though. You've thrown me for the patrician. So Jeremy Irons, good. I thought I had a slightly more interesting one, but now you've derailed me. Criticizing my pronunciations.
I can
Who
throw
was
out a few names that I wish I had cast. Tony Dalton, who played Lalo in Better Call Saul.
ah
Um,
yes, sorry. Let me go back. Giancarlo Esposito.
Aha, as the patrician.
Yes.
Oh, it's a bit plain to type, but I
But
find it
but
delicious.
yeah, but I mean yeah, but the patrician is so arch. He's written as such an arch character that like you get the most arch guy you can. And at least like yes, he's playing the type massively, but like at least he's a person of color and he's you know the accent would be different and stuff. So I think it could still be a little bit interesting. But
When you look at now I don't know Esposito's work prior to Breaking Bad, but
mm,
when you look at him now, he on Better Call Saul and the Star Wars stuff, he looks so much older.
yeah,
And I think rather than try and recapture that sort of younger Esposito, the patrician role would be perfect,
mm,
for
yeah.
his age.
So I'm breaking my own rule there and going for somebody not from the UK or Ireland. But if you're gonna yeah break it for anybody, I think it's for him. So yes, sorry to interrupt.
Grant, I triggered your Breaking Bad memories.
Indeed.
No problem. I would have also had, well, a Star Wars link somewhere, Pedro Pascal, who I was introduced to through the community table read.
Mm,
But of course was also in Game of Thrones as Oberon
yeah.
Martell.
He's
Uh,
getting on a bit actually, not
he's
in real
he's
life,
only
but
48.
yeah. I was thinking I forgot I skipped over Carrot.
You're
I
younger
was
than
thinking
me.
about yeah. I was thinking about Pedro Pascal for Carrot potentially. But he's probably getting on a little bit, you know. Like when he was like 30 or so, maybe he could have got away with it. Because I saw something he was in this movie with Nicolas Cage recently, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. You seen that? And he's like he plays this like super rich Nicolas Cage fanboy, and he's got this wide-eyed enthusiasm in it that is very Carrot. Yeah,
He does have a sort of a young, well, when he did that table read, it was a couple of years ago,
yeah,
a fairly young energy to him.
yeah. He totally does,
Um,
and he's got really good. I mean, he can do that wide-eyed thing, but and he can do a lot of heavy drama, but he's got great comic timing as well. Like,
and I also had Walton Goggins in my head, who I really don't know from anything other than that same community episode and The
oh yeah.
Shield. Um,
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
just wonderful. That Goggins is 51 now. Um, but in The Shield, he had just this wild, unpredictable energy that, very much the character and a very sort of inspiring performance. Not that I'm inspired to, go out and beat people up and steal drugs and like murder the odd person. But no, you know
I
what?
do
I
have
found
time for him
myself
though.
writing something
Uh,
recently, and I decided just I would call this character Walton, and that decision just transformed this whole character into Walton Goggins.
awesome.
And he's
I'm
he's
why
just this
not?
character that came out of nowhere as one of the most fun characters to write in the book. I had no idea it was going to happen. So yeah, much love to Walton Goggins.
But yeah, yeah, I've got time for him as well. I know he's big in got a big role in Justified, which I've dipped in and out of over the years. But yeah, very quite a unique presence, and as you say, a bit dangerous, a bit edgy. Oh yeah, is there anybody who I've missed who I would like to cast? No, I feel like I've opened the American floodgates a little bit, but that could take all night. I would love to put Michael Shannon in somewhere, but where? He's not quite the patrician, you know, because I mean, what version of him would be the patrician? It wouldn't be Zod. It would be, but then all his comic roles, he's on the back foot a lot more, so that's not right for that. A wizard? He could be like the Dean or something, maybe.
Bring me up to speed on Michael Shannon.
So Michael Shannon is Zod in Man of Steel and is kind of the main antagonist in the early series of Boardwalk Empire. What's he been in recently? He's The Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe. You know, yeah, okay. If we're not biting on Michael Shannon, that's fine. That's fine. I can let him go. But he is awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's so many big actors there. I love that we didn't go for like any Tom Hardys or any Tom Hiddlestons or anybody like that. You know, I like that our choices are all basically from either Press Gang, Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, or Breaking Bad. Like that. That feels like the perfect.
You know what? I feel that you and I are very hireable right now.
Totally.
You put quite a big budget behind us. You made the right decision, Roasty Buns.
Yep, let's make it happen. The writer strike's over. We're ready. We're ready to work.
Well,
Unfortunately, at time of recording, the actor strike isn't over, so we can't actually hire any of these people, or certainly not any of these Americans. So sorry, guys.
well, good things have happened. There's a petition on Parliament's petition right now in the UK about getting actors paid during writers'
That would be
strikes.
nice.
That independent revenue stream is probably much needed. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't get my hopes up about that, unfortunately, to the way the labour laws are in this country. But yeah, look, I mean, we should be thinking positive. You know, the writers in the States got, I think, as good a deal as could be expected, and that, I mean, that's really set the tone for the SAG-AFTRA negotiations. So I would expect it fairly. I imagine that strike will be resolved by the time this podcast comes out. So maybe it's redundant to even talk about it. But yeah, we should take those wins where we get them. You know. That was good, wasn't it? All right, bye. Yeah. No, definitely we have to end this one with a plea to other listeners to send us questions. Otherwise, we're going to have to start cutting roasty buns in on the Patreon money.
oh yeah, the sweet moolah we're making. Yeah.
Drowning in it. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see what happens when there's like engagement?
Indeed.
Full
It's great.
episodes are created.
Love it. Yeah, it makes our job so
Really-
much easier. It's so much fun though. I said to Andy off air that like we could do this again easily. I love talking about actors, movies, TV shows, casting. I love talking about Discworld. There's so many more characters we could have got to, but I think we'll leave it there for now.
I've even got a similar sort of question in mind for a future book. But I mean, there's loads of possibilities. You know, who would be directing your Discworld TV show or feature film? But yes, leave it there for now, and we will be back in a month or so with some lovely new Discworld readings.
Yeah, but we should really get back to actually reading Discworld, or you're never going to finish it.
Yes.
We'll do that.
Check us out at all the usual places: Twitter, Facebook, at Discworld GNU, and on YouTube, where Viewing Figures are doing much better, and on Spotify for podcasters, and really wherever you listen to your podcast. We're probably hanging about there.
But definitely, if you work for Narrativia, you've got the rights to Discworld. You know, call us.
Make the call. Goodbye.
Bye.